All right, first and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, the Heavenly Father, who in this world ignorantly calls God. His name, Yahweh, means He is, He exists. Ba Hashem, that means in the name of Yahweh Shai. Yahweh Shai is whom this world ignorantly calls Jesus. His name means He saves, He delivers. All right, and all in the Rakah HaKodash, which is the Spirit Holy. All right, so those are the Paleo Hebrew true names to the Heavenly Father's only begotten Son. I want to give double honors to the elder apostles and bishops of Great Millstone, ruling well, teaching this truth on the highways and hedges week in and week out, risking their lives and freedom to do so. All right, sincere salutations to the fellow Akim out here laboring in this truth. Shalom to the 1/3 part of Israel, scattered to the four winds of the earth. Okay, beginning with the 144,000, hopefully like men, of course, of Yasharahla, which would be so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. Right? You are the children of the Heavenly Father. All right, y'all watching me all shy. So, yeah, man, I'm the brother Tisab Yehuda, back with a quickening in the spirit and power of Yahweh watching me all shy. And this is according to Yahoo News and other news outlets. We'll go over a couple of the sources. So this says the Telegraph, Britain's role in greatest crime in history to come under UN spotlight. So, for those of you that don't know, the UN is the United Nations. All right, so that's the flag in the background of this image. Okay. African nations are lobbying countries across the world to accuse Britain of playing a key part in the worst crime in history. All right. This article is the second of a three-part series exploring how African countries are renewing their battle to win slavery reparations from Britain. It says African nations are lobbying countries across the world to accuse Britain of playing a part in the worst crime of history, quote unquote. Ghana will use its United Nations seat later this month to table a resolution on behalf of the African Union, AU, which has committed to seeking redress for the historic crimes or grievances of slavery and colonialism. So they're going after the Edomites. The resolution will officially recognize the transatlantic slave trade, in which Britain played a leading role alongside other European powers as the greatest crime against humanity in history. All right, so you talking about they better be including the tiny tots, okay, because they had everything to do with the transporting and the ships. All right, it says while the resolution is still being drafted, it is understood that it will label the European-led slave trade as history's greatest crime because of its scale, duration, and enduring impacts. The transatlantic trade lasted about 400 years, and an estimated 12 million Africans were transported. They say Africans, but it's really the Israelites. All right, with the largest proportion going to Brazil. Okay, the AU hopes to secure reparations from Europe to compensate for historical crimes and enduring impacts, all right, which are said to include economic disparities between the West and the developing world. So they talking about the wealth disparity, right? It says while the transatlantic trade will be condemned, it is understood that the 1,300-year-long Arab trade, which the Ishmaelites, or the Arabs, okay, traded in African slaves, will not be mentioned. But that needs to be mentioned too. Because if you look at, let's get that. Psalms 83, we talk about the Ishmaelites, right? I mean, you got to include them. Psalms 83, verse 1 says, keep not thou silence, O power, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. All right? For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, they make a noise. And they that they hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, that's including all of them. Say, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. That's why they was calling us Africans in the article. They know we the Israelites, man. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. All right, the tabernacles of Edom, right? The Edomites, so-called white man, okay, and the Ishmaelites, the so-called Arabs, okay, of Moab, the so-called Chinese, the Hagarenes, the seeds, the sons of the Hagarenes, which pretty much is the Ishmaelites too, okay, the descendants of Hagar, okay, Gabal and Ammon, okay, and Amalek, that's the small hat, the tiny tops, the ones they call themselves the J word, all right. It says the Philistines and the inhabitants of Tyre. Okay, so that would be the Americans. Okay, and the Philistines, of course, the Hamites. All right, Asher also is joined with them. They have Hopen, which means helped the children of Lot. Okay, children of Lot is Ben-Ami, Ammonite, and Moab, the Chinese. Okay, and you gotta remember that the ancient Chinese was so-called melanated, so-called black. Okay, so it's a lot. Let's get a little more of this. All right, so basically the judgment of the great city, man, is what this really is about. All right, the world is finally forced to look at the transatlantic slave trade not just as a historical error, but as the greatest crime ever recorded. All right, so while the African Union and nations like Ghana push for resolutions and reparations from the daughter of Babylon and the EU, which is the B system, okay, in NATO, we understand that we understand the deeper spiritual meaning and spiritual reality, right? This wasn't just a human trafficking. This was the physical capturing of the true biblical Israelites. Okay? The 15 million souls dragged across the Atlantic in chains are the descendants of the 12 tribes of Israel. We got to make that clear. Okay? The curses found in Deuteronomy 28 serve as our true DNA. We don't need none of your tests. All right? Deuteronomy 28:68, it says, and Yahweh shall bring thee into Egypt. Okay? Which is symbolic for what? The house of bondage. Again with ships. All right, so Deuteronomy was written after Exodus, after Genesis. All right, so obviously the new Egypt is America, okay, because we were in slavery, we're in bondage, right? It says again with ships, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, aka slaves. Who went through that? Did the tiny tops go through that? Hell no. It was Negroes, so-called black people, all right, so-called Native Americans, so-called Latinos. All right, we always in the same pot. Israel is in captivity together here in Babylon the Great, man. Let's take a Deuteronomy 28:48. Say, therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies in want of all things. All right, and he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck. What that sound like? It says, until he have destroyed thee. Right, destroyed our heritage, our lineage, our language, our belief system, and tainted it and corrupted it and defiled it. Okay, that's destruction. It says, basically, what does it say? Therefore, thou shalt serve thy enemies. We serve them. All right, and one of all things, if you want to start a business, you got to go to Esau. You want food, you got to go to his grocery store. You want a car, you got to buy from him. So on and so forth, right? So let's look at the wealth of these nations versus the poverty of Jacob. It's pretty clear. The global wealth gap isn't a coincidence. The Western world was built on the backs, blood, and spirit of the children of Yasharahla. All right, we are very inventive people, very smart, very intelligent, and they knew this, and they took full advantage of it, and did atrocious things to our people, our men and our women and our children. Okay, that's unbelievable, man. If you really look into the history. Okay, so while the UN debates resolutions, the scriptures pretty much already got the final verdict on those who enrich themselves through our oppression. What it say in Revelation 13:10? It say, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. What else it say? He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. All right. Vengeance is Yahweh's. The nations are scheduled to vote on March 25th, from what we know. But the true International Day of Remembrance is when the election, the chosen of Yahweh Shem Yahushai, wake up to our heritage. All right. So we don't look to the UN or Britain for a check. All right, we don't look for them to pay nothing. We look to Yahweh Shai, right? He who sits at, and he who pretty much he who sits at the right hand of Yahweh. Okay, because once he returns, he's going to establish the kingdom, where the tribes of Israel will govern eternally and in righteousness, man. All right, so the greatest crime in history requires a divine sentence that no earthly court can provide. All right. The social and economic consequences of our captivity will only be healed when the throne of Jacob is restored. All right. The position of the Son at the right hand of the Father is a direct fulfillment of the Psalms, showing his authority over all nations until the time of the end. Psalms 110 and 1. Yahweh said unto my Lord, sit thou on my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool. All right. So when the disciples asked about the timing of the kingdom, they asked Yahushua about it. The answer pointed toward a future restoration where the leadership of the world would return to the patriarchs of our people. All right, so our kingdom is coming. In the book of Matthew 19 verse 28, and Yahushua said unto them, verily I say unto you, that ye which have followed me in the regeneration, when the Son of Man shall sit in the throne of his glory, ye also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. All right, that's divine order. All right, so this order is eternal, as written in Daniel 7 and 18. Okay, and I'm gonna finish up here. It says, but the saints of the Most High Yahweh shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. Okay, so the UN resolutions are merely the nations acknowledging their debt before the true King Yahushua returns to collect it. Right, he's gonna put all these principalities, these thrones, under his feet, all these dominions under his feet, man. Okay, and right now, he, in a spiritual sense, he has given his men, the power to tread upon serpents and scorpions, man, in the spirit. Okay, so with that being said, Lord's willing, this is edifying. Until the next one, Bob to this wicked place. Shalom.